My Capricorn dad mocked me at his retirement speech, but I waited years for this moment. The scent of brewing coffee and stale paper was the constant companion of Alex Miller's early mornings. In his cramped apartment in Lincoln Park, Chicago, overlooking the drab brick facades of classic city walk-ups, Alex would meticulously review lines of code, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. It was 2004, and Alex was a junior developer at DataStream Solutions, a mid-tier tech firm nestled in the Loop. He specialized in database architecture, a field his father, Richard Miller, a titan of Chicago's real estate development scene, vaguely understood as fiddling with computers. Richard had built Miller and Sons Holdings from a small, regional construction outfit into a multi-million-dollar empire of steel, glass, and concrete across the Midwest. He was the quintessential Capricorn, ambitious, disciplined, and utterly pragmatic, with an unyielding belief in tangible assets. Alex, however, saw the world differently. While his father envisioned soaring skyscrapers, Alex saw the invisible networks of information that underpinned them. He saw data points, algorithms, and predictive models as the true architects of future wealth. This divergence had always been a quiet rift between them. Richard had always pushed Alex towards real business, finance, law, or, ideally, joining Miller and Sons. But Alex, a quiet, introspective young man, had found his passion in the logical, intricate dance of digital systems. Richard tolerated Alex's career choice with a thinly veiled condescension, often peppering their Sunday dinners in Oak Park with rhetorical questions like, "Are you sure you wouldn't prefer a sensible MBA, Alex? Computers are a phase, aren't they?" Alex would just nod, a tight smile on his face, the slow burn of unspoken frustration simmering within him. He was 26 then, desperate for his father's approval, yet determined to forge his own path, a path Richard seemed incapable of truly seeing, let alone respecting. Life continued in this predictable rhythm until the autumn of 2008. The global financial crisis loomed, but Richard Miller, ever the shrewd operator, had navigated Miller and Sons through previous downturns with uncanny foresight. Now, at 60, he announced his retirement. It was to be a grand affair, a celebratory send-off for a man who had shaped parts of the city's skyline. The Palmer House Hilton's grand ballroom, an opulent space dripping with gilded trim and crystal chandeliers, was chosen for the event. Hundreds of Chicago's elite bankers, politicians, rival developers, old associates gathered. Alex, feeling acutely out of place in his rented tuxedo, sat at a table near the back, amidst distant cousins and junior partners, a silent observer in his father's glittering world. The evening progressed with toasts and accolades, each speaker praising Richard's vision, his tenacity, his Midas touch. Finally, it was Richard's turn. He strode to the podium, his silver hair impeccably combed, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. His speech was a masterful blend of self-aggrandizement and folksy charm. He recounted humble beginnings, celebrated milestones, and thanked his loyal team. Then, he turned to his family, his wife, Eleanor, first, a brief, perfunctory acknowledgement. And then, his gaze, sharp and cold, found Alex across the room. "And of course," Richard boomed, his voice resonating through the microphone, "my son, Alex. A fine young man, certainly." A slight pause laden with unspoken meaning. The smile on Richard's face tightened, shifting from proud to patronizing. Alex chose a different path. While I was out there, building empires of steel and glass, forging deals that reshaped the urban landscape, Alex was, well, he was building spreadsheets. A ripple of polite, questioning laughter spread through the room. Richard leaned into the microphone, lowering his voice conspiratorially, as if sharing a humorous secret. Or, as he calls them, algorithms. Bless his heart, he's always been more comfortable with the digital than the tangible. Perhaps he'll one day build a truly impressive website. Something with, what do they call them, pop-ups. Ha! He chuckled, a deep, rumbling sound, and patted the air dismissively. A wave of louder laughter, now clearly amused at Alex's expense, swept through the ballroom. Richard winked at the audience as if to say, "What can you do with these modern kids?" Alex felt the blood drain from his face, then rush back in a fiery flush. His ears burned. He felt exposed, diminished, reduced to a joke in front of hundreds of strangers and acquaintances. His father's words were a public disavowal, a declaration that Alex's chosen path was trivial, insignificant, and ultimately, a disappointment. He saw a flicker of pity in his mother's eyes, quickly veiled. He saw amusement, even contempt, in the faces of men his father admired. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on him, stealing his breath. He clenched his fists, knuckles white, the raw, bitter taste of shame coating his tongue. Alex didn't stay for dessert. He mumbled a quick goodbye to his mother, who squeezed his hand apologetically, and escaped into the cold Chicago night. The roar of Michigan Avenue traffic was a distant, hollow echo compared to the ringing silence of his own mind. He walked for hours aimlessly, the biting wind mirroring the sharp, lacerating pain in his chest. His father's words replayed in an endless loop, building spreadsheets, pop-ups, bless his heart. Each phrase was a fresh wound. For years he had craved his father's approval, had subtly tried to prove his worth. Now, that craving was dead, replaced by a chilling clarity. Richard Miller, for all his business acumen, was blind. Blind to the future, blind to the power of the intangible, blind to his son's true potential. And in that blinding arrogance, Alex saw not just a slight, but an opportunity. The seed of revenge, cold and calculating, began to take root in the fertile ground of his profound humiliation. The immediate aftermath was a period of intense internal turmoil. Alex isolated himself, his apartment becoming a fortress against the world. He stopped answering calls, ignored emails, and even took a few days off work, feigning a sudden illness. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the scene over and over. The initial despair, the shame that made him want to disappear, slowly began to morph into a different, colder emotion: resolve. He realized his father's mockery wasn't just a personal slight, it was a fundamental misjudgment of an entire paradigm shift. Richard understood dirt, steel, and mortgages. He didn't understand the true value of data, the exponential power of network effects, or the silent, invisible forces that were beginning to reshape every industry, including real estate. This was Alex's advantage, his hidden weapon. He began to devour every article, every white paper, every obscure research publication he could find on predictive analytics, machine learning, and their nascent applications in real estate. He saw the inefficiencies, the reliance on outdated models, the human biases that permeated traditional valuation methods. He envisioned a system, an algorithm that could cut through all that, predicting market trends with unprecedented accuracy, identifying opportunities and risks years in advance. It wouldn't be a spreadsheet or a pop-up. It would be an oracle. In 2010, 2 years after the incident, Alex made a drastic move. He quit Data Stream Solutions and left Chicago, leaving behind the ghost of his father's words. He moved to San Francisco, the undisputed epicenter of technological innovation. The change was invigorating. The air in Silicon Valley buzzed with ambition and revolutionary ideas, a stark contrast to Chicago's more traditional, established power structures. He landed a role at a small, agile startup focused on urban data mapping, not directly real estate, but close enough to feed his growing obsession. He worked long hours, absorbed everything he could about cloud computing, big data architecture, and advanced statistical modeling. He networked relentlessly, not with the intention of immediate gain, but to learn, to connect with the brightest minds in his field, building a quiet reputation as a brilliant, if somewhat reserved, data specialist. His personal life became secondary. Every spare moment was dedicated to his secret project. In the evenings, after work, he'd return to his modest apartment in the Mission District, fueled by cheap coffee and an unyielding drive. He coded, he researched, he experimented. He built prototypes of his predictive models, initially crude, but growing in sophistication with each passing month. He envisioned a platform that could ingest vast datasets, economic indicators, demographic shifts, zoning changes, even satellite imagery analysis of construction sites and traffic patterns. And, through proprietary machine learning algorithms, forecast commercial real estate values and demand with pinpoint accuracy for specific neighborhoods, even specific blocks. He called his burgeoning project TerraVista Labs, Terra for land, Vista for foresight. By 2015, 5 years into his San Francisco exile, TerraVista Labs was no longer just a personal project. It was a functioning prototype, having consistently outpredicted market analysts in private backtesting simulations. Alex knew he had something revolutionary. He quietly secured seed funding from a few venture capitalists who believed in his vision, captivated by his quiet intensity and the undeniable accuracy of his early models. He kept the company small, lean, and intensely private, operating out of an unmarked office in Soma. He focused on refining the algorithms, expanding the data pipelines, and building an ironclad intellectual property portfolio. His father, meanwhile, remained oblivious. Richard, enjoying his retirement, would occasionally call Alex, offering unsolicited advice about diversifying into more tangible investments or scoffing at another tech bubble. Alex would listen patiently, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, never revealing the true nature of his work. The longer Richard remained in the dark, the more potent Alex's eventual move would be. The silence was Alex's most effective weapon in this long game of chess. Richard Miller, restless in retirement, decided in 2020 to embark on one final, defining project. He called it the Miller Tower, a grandiose, ultra-luxury residential high-rise planned for a prime, undeveloped plot in Chicago's Fulton Market District. It was to be his magnum opus, a symbol of his enduring legacy, a testament to his vision and resilience even in the face of changing times. He invested a significant portion of his remaining personal fortune, securing massive development loans based on his formidable reputation and decades of established relationships with banks and investors. He dismissed whispers about shifts in urban living post-pandemic, the rise of remote work, and changing demographics. Luxury always sells, he'd scoff, and location, location, location. Alex, now 42, living a comfortable, albeit work-intensive, life in a sprawling loft in San Francisco, heard about the Miller Tower project through industry whispers. TerraVista Labs had long since emerged from stealth mode, though it remained a private company, known only to a select circle of institutional investors and major real estate players for its astonishingly accurate market predictions. Its AI-driven platform was a closely guarded secret, its unparalleled foresight making it a quiet disruptor in the global real estate market. Alex's algorithms, running constantly for years, had already painted a grim picture for the very type of luxury high-rise Richard was building, especially in a market like Chicago, where an oversupply of high-end units was silently brewing, exacerbated by evolving work patterns and a subtle outflow of high-net-worth individuals from dense urban cores. Alex didn't need to directly intervene. He didn't need to sabotage. He simply needed to leverage the quiet power he had meticulously built. TerraVista Labs, renowned for its uncanny foresight, began a subtle, strategic pivot in its own portfolio and guidance to its exclusive clientele. First, TerraVista Labs, which had amassed significant capital from its highly profitable, data-driven acquisitions, quietly divested from specific luxury commercial real estate assets in major U.S. cities, including Chicago, that mirrored the exact market segment Richard was targeting. This wasn't a public announcement, but a series of large, carefully timed transactions through shell companies and diversified funds. When a major player starts quietly shedding a specific asset class, others in the know pay attention. This subtle shift created a ripple effect, signaling a cautious sentiment among the industry's savviest players. Second, Alex's company strategically sold its high-level predictive market intelligence, not broadly, but very selectively, to a few key institutional investors and rival developers who operated in the broader Chicago market, but were not direct competitors of Miller and Sons. These insights, delivered under strict non-disclosure agreements, allowed these players to adjust their own investment strategies, pulling back from speculative luxury projects or acquiring distressed assets at rock-bottom prices. This quietly starved the traditional market of available capital and resources, making it harder for projects like the Miller Tower to secure funding and buyers. Third, TerraVista Labs, known for its ability to identify undervalued and distressed assets months, even years before traditional markets, began a series of strategic acquisitions. They targeted older, but well-located commercial properties in Chicago, not for redevelopment, but for repurposing into flexible co-working spaces or affordable residential units. A stark contrast to Richard's luxury vision. These moves quietly signaled to the wider market where the real future demand lay, further undermining the perceived viability of traditional luxury towers. The Miller Tower project, Richard's swansong, began to falter almost imperceptibly at first. Loan approvals, once a formality for Richard Miller, became protracted and riddled with caveats. Supply chains, already strained post-pandemic, seemed to suffer disproportionately for this specific project, materials becoming scarce or prohibitively expensive. Pre-sales for the luxury units were sluggish, a worrying trend that Richard initially attributed to market jitters or lack of vision from his sales team. His old contacts, once eager to invest, became evasive, citing economic uncertainties or shifting priorities. Richard struggled to understand why. The market wasn't behaving as it always has. His decades of intuition, honed by countless cycles, seemed to fail him. The hammer fell in the spring of 2023. The Wall Street Journal, a publication Richard devoured daily, ran a sprawling feature piece on the front page of its Business and Technology section. TerraVista Labs, the AI Oracle reshaping global real estate. The article detailed TerraVista's proprietary algorithms, its astonishing track record of predicting market shifts years in advance, and its quiet dominance in the evolving proptech sector. It highlighted how the company's clients had navigated the recent luxury real estate slump, exiting problematic investments long before the downturn became widely apparent. It also mentioned TerraVista's recent, highly strategic acquisitions of distressed assets, turning them into booming, repurposed properties, signaling a new era for urban development. Richard read the article over his morning coffee, his eyes scanning the details. His jaw went slack when he reached the CEO profile. Alex Miller, 45, CEO and founder of TerraVista Labs. A full-page, high-resolution photo accompanied the text. It wasn't the image of the diffident, spreadsheet boy he had mocked, but a confident, formidable man, eyes sharp with intelligence, a quiet strength emanating from his posture. The article quoted Alex. "The future of real estate isn't just about brick and mortar. It's about data, predictive analytics, and understanding the invisible forces that shape urban landscapes. Those who rely solely on outdated intuition will find themselves increasingly outmaneuvered." The words hit Richard with the force of a physical blow. He reread them, then reread the entire article, his mind racing, piecing together the subtle tremors he had felt in the market, the unexpected shifts in investor sentiment. He connected the dots. Alex hadn't directly attacked the Miller Tower. He had simply built a powerful tool, a system that predicted precisely why the Miller Tower was a bad idea, and then quietly, subtly, influenced the market to align with those predictions. Alex had redefined success in a way Richard had never comprehended, using the very digital world he had scorned, and in doing so, had created the very conditions that were now strangling his legacy project. The Miller Tower project collapsed within months. Without the anticipated pre-sales, and with lenders pulling back due to perceived market instability subtly orchestrated by Alex's company's influence and predictions, Richard was forced to liquidate assets at a tremendous loss. His lifelong work, his empire, crumbled, not due to direct sabotage, but due to his inability to adapt to the future Alex had mastered. His reputation, once unassailable, was in tatters, synonymous with a monumental failure. Weeks later, Alex flew back to Chicago for a quiet family dinner, a prearranged event with his mother. Richard was there, too. He was gaunt, his shoulders slumped, the vigor gone from his eyes. The easy confidence that had defined him was replaced by a hollow defeat. He looked at Alex, not with anger, but with a complex mix of awe, bitterness, and a profound, wordless realization. There was no triumphant declaration from Alex, no gloating words. He simply spoke of his work, of the market, in general terms. The silence in the room, heavy with unspoken understanding, was the true victory. Richard had to live with the crushing reality that the spreadsheet boy he had publicly dismissed and mocked had not only surpassed him, but had, in essence, used the very skills he scorned to quietly dismantle his legacy. The revenge wasn't loud or spectacular. It was a cold, surgical precision, executed over years, leaving Richard Miller utterly outmaneuvered by the future he refused to see. The weight of that knowledge, carried in the quiet space between father and son, was a heavier burden than any financial ruin. Total characters, including spaces, 21,798.